Okay.
Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and get started. I apologize for the technical difficulties here. I'm on the road, so we're just trying to make sure that we have make sure we make it. I had a last minute engagement I had to do. I had to do it, but I just wanted to real quickly introduce a friend of mine and someone I highly respect and love, actually, like family. I'm so proud of him and his journey and how he's pushing forward. Awesome father, awesome, awesome husband, and an awesome man. So with that, I'm going to introduce Gilbert Abraham.
Thank you, Dwayne, and I love you too, man, and I appreciate you. Yeah, I just to start, I just recently was talking with my father, and that was the first kind of thing that came up to me, was like, on this idea of manhood. And my family traditionally were from Nigeria, and I'm first generation Nigeria, straight off the plane. And all of kind of the sacrifices he was kind of laying out of all the things that he had to do as a father, bringing us here to this country, settling us, and all the different things that went into us having the kind of life that we had. And when I was thinking about, okay, what's the example of, what it is to be a man, it's how you deal with all of these different types of challenges and obstacles. And that's kind of how I wanted to start. So just Bible verse I want to start with is Isaiah 43, 2 and 3. And it's when you pass through the waters, I will be with you. And when you pass through the rivers, they will not sweep over you. When you walk through the fire, you will not be burned. When you walk through the fire, you will not be burned. The flames will not set you ablaze. For I am the Lord your God, the Holy One of Israel, your Savior. I give Egypt for your ransom, Cush and Seba in your stead. And for me, what that flows directly into is there's a poem that I share quite a bit. And obviously it's a famous poem, but I wanted to share a lot of the context behind it and the history of it. And the poem is Invictus. And Invictus in Latin, it means unconquerable soul. For all of us as men that are going through all the things that we're going through within this life, you have to have an impervious, impenetrable type of approach to whatever happens and whatever trials that may come. And so before I share the poem, something I wanted to share about the author that wrote it. The author is William Ernest Henley. So at the time that this man was writing the poem, he had Pott's disease, which is cancer of the bone. And basically he was getting his leg amputated as he was writing this poem. And if you all know the last lines of the poem, or even the first lines, out of the night that covers me black as the pit from pole to pole, I thank whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. Like what he's coming out saying, even though, right, I'm about to lose this leg, even though I'm going through something at that time in the 1600s, you lose your leg, you're probably gonna die, right? That you can't take from me. You can't take my unconquerable soul in the face of this thing. And what really connected me with this poem was then fast forward many years to Mandela, Nelson Mandela, who is in jail for 27 years in a 2-foot by 2-foot box. And a lot of people, I think, forget that. And this man was about 6'4", 6'5". He was imprisoned in a 2-foot by 2-foot box and was only given an hour of daylight a day where he could get outside and walk around. And this man was reciting this poem to himself every day. This is what he was telling himself. This is what he was preaching to himself. And for somebody to go through that for 27 years and to emerge from that place, loving and forgiving people, bringing a country together, that to me is manhood. That to me, right, is like what it is to be a man, right? Like, I don't know. I don't even know if I could tell you, you could imprison me for 27 years and I'm coming out loving and bringing people together. But just the context of it, and that's the power for me of the poem. So whenever I'm going through anything, this is what I'm turning to. This is what I'm remembering. This is what I'm reciting. And then I'm remembering that even though I passed through the rivers, right? And the waters and the fire and all these other things. God's with me. God's with me. So the poem, out of the night that covers me, black as the pit from pole to pole. I thank whatever gods may be for my incomparable soul. In the fell clutch of circumstance, I have not winced nor cried aloud. Under the bludgeonings of chance, my head is bloody but unbowed. Beyond this place of wrath and tears looms but the horror of the shade, and yet the menace of the years finds and shall find me unafraid. It matters not how straight the gate, how charged with punishments the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. And that poem to me is just the last lines. I'm the captain of my fate. I'm the captain of my soul. Obviously, God's the captain, but you understand the point. You understand the point. The choices I make will direct what will happen to me as you go forward. And so just to move on from there, one of my favorite personal philosophers is James Allen. And James Allen wrote the book, As a Man Thinketh, which is an awesome book. And something, again, that I turn to quite a bit, and something I'm actually having my 11-year-old son start reading now, because I want him to kind of understand and start to develop these kinds of mindsets and habits around all the things that he's dealing with. And one of the things that really struck me and that was big for me was he was talking about, if your purpose or intention in your mindset is one way, that it feeds something else, right? That if you're basically clean of heart, and I'll just read it. Out of a clean heart comes a clean life. Out of a clean body comes a clean mind, right? And out of a defiled mind proceeds a defiled life and a corrupt body. And he details so many of these things in explicit detail of how we're supposed to go about approaching the way, that in every way. And then honestly, again, it's a challenge for every man. How do I do everything in my power to keep every part of my life clean, right? So that I can show up the way that I need to for the people that care about me the most, right? And that I care about the most. And then also for those people that I just want to be there to serve. So this is a big core piece for me is James Allen. And then, to move on from here, the next big core pillar or theme for me as far as manhood is pass it on. And in large part, I really want to talk about this because I think that, again, from my personal culture and heritage growing up, when we first got to America, that little village we had of other Nigerians that we grew up with around the Maryland, DC area, it's the idea and the mindset of the village to raise children, right? It's everybody's responsibility to raise children. And something that immediately gravitated me towards what Dwayne was doing at Garner Road for all those years was, we're raising young men. That was the purpose of that, right? And that is everything that I stepped into when I was growing up. The church I grew up in, the small community I was with, it is the responsibility all the way in Africa. If I did something wrong, before I made it 2 blocks, there was somebody that was ready to give me a spanking, right? In our little community. And I had full right to do it. There's nothing I could do about it. As mad as I would get with my mom and whoever for telling what I did, but that was the form of peer pressure that kept everything intact. And it's creating that culture and forming those types of bonds of tutelage to be able to raise young men that I think is vital and imperative in order to have, honestly, because you can't do it even with a 2-family home with people together, they're doing everything the right way. It's still hard. It's still hard with all of the other pressures that are around. And one of my professors in college, he would challenge us, because I had him come the very first basketball program that I did. The message he gave to the group: pass it on, pass it on. It's all right. I'm doing for you. All of you gentlemen, right? You're doing for a young man. It's our responsibility now, not only just to pass it on, but now to create environments for this type of growth to take place. So my challenge to everybody on this call, and whatever your gift is, whatever your vocation, whatever your form of mastery, whatever God's blessed you with, is find a way to pass it on. And honestly, in some ways, it's as simple as a conversation, but I think that's the core, right, of what it is to be a man. And then to move on from this, I was talking with my father again, and he said the biggest thing about manhood is a man's responsibility to his family, and upholding the values within that family, keeping that family intact, and doing our part as men with our families. And that resonated with me, obviously. And that's something that's always stuck with me, right? As far as like, how can we go about doing that the best way that we can? And it flowed for me directly into legacy and what we leave behind through passing it on through all of the things that we've just discussed. All right, is the core piece. So yeah, I'll stop there, and then I have more, but I'll stop there.
Oh, go ahead, man. We're listening. But let me just ask you this question, because I know you work with a lot of men, young men that have dreams,
Yeah.
and they have a passion, and we know that passion is that round orange basketball.
Mm-hmm.
How do you how do you use that dream and that passion to build them up as men? Talk to that. I know how you do it, but I've seen you do it. But let people know, because there are men here that deal with younger men that have passions, have dreams, and give them some wisdom there, sir.
Yeah. Just the big thing I would say is that, like, I tell all the young men all the time, like, I can't mold something. I consider myself a blacksmith as a coach. I can't mold something. The players are metal. I can't mold something if it doesn't burn hot. If you don't bring your passion, you don't bring all your energy as a coach, I can't mold it. I can't turn it into Excalibur, right? I can't turn it into the ultimate sword, which is the ultimate goal. So as a coach, and honestly, even as a parent, one of the big quotes that I share a lot is, it's not the job of the gardener to make the plant grow. It's the job of a gardener to create ideal conditions, right? So what are the type of conditions that I can create that promote growth, that promote change? So if somebody comes to me with a player, by the time they leave me, they better be different. If they're not different, I have not accomplished my goal. So if they don't come burning hot on their own, I'm going to turn up the heat at such a degree and to such a level and create such an atmosphere, right, that is hostile in the most healthy way, not to the point that they're going to fight or whatever, right? But as close as possible, right? Highest level of discomfort and confrontation as possible, so that they will change. And then when they change, now we have success, and honestly, it's something that, like, I take great pride in, because at this point now I've done it all over the world. And then I started, here in the US, obviously, went to Europe and did it for several years. Now, obviously, got the opportunity to do it in the NBA, or the G League rather, and helping other players get to the NBA. So it's been a great passion of mine. And to me, the beauty of all of that is the challenge of finding ways. How can I make somebody so uncomfortable? How can I challenge them? How can I find out exactly what intrinsically deeply motivates them, and then push them to the brink? Because the thing that I would say the biggest thing I've learned is, all of these young men want to be coached. They want to. They deeply want it. As much as they might fight it and resist it, they want parenting, right? Like, that's what ultimately this coaching turns into. It's parenting. And they crave it, right? Regardless what their parental situation is, everybody wants to be pushed to be the best version of themselves. And for me, outside of all this stuff I'll diagram and put together and all that, it's, can I get to the heart of a human being and push them beyond the brink and challenge them in a way that they're forced to be different?
Right.
Yeah. So I would say that's the core of it. And you've seen some of my tactics, so so
For sure. And we've had those conversations where I'm like, hey, Gil, I'm sending you this kid. And you're like, okay. I said, no, I'm sending you this kid. You're like, oh, okay. Yeah. I got you. Yeah. So I'm gonna give you one word: failure.
It's the lifeblood of success. If you don't have an intimate relationship with failure, you don't know how to be successful, I think. And
Mm,
even the undefeated fighter, the undefeated person in training, they're trying to become as intimate with failure and how to respond.
mm.
I mean, I think that's the core of it and the crux of it. And, you know, yeah, with all these basketball players, all these athletes, all these professional people and all the spaces that they exist in, if they're not developing that intimate relationship with knowing what it is to fail in training or to fail at work or to fail look, we all, you know, married men failing with your wife at something, you know, failing with what, you know, with your kids at not being able to come up with what you need to come up with to do things like, but it's how we respond. And it's the example that we set, you know, because I'm fallible, I'm flawed, right? But the one thing I know I am proud of is no matter what happens, I'm going to fight. I'm going to respond. I'll do everything I can to be the best version of myself, you know?
I got you. And then I'm gonna hit you with one last question because it's kind of a setup, but you deal with a lot of men again. And what is the toughest or and most consistent flaw or issue or problem that you see with young men these days, and what do you do to address it?
I think the biggest and most consistent thing is that most men that are young adults have not had other men holding them accountable. So you end up with broken young men that you have to figure out a way to be both very hard on and also be compassionate at the same time with to bring them along. Standards are the standards, they don't change, but you also need to put an arm around their back because they're not equipped, right? So what ends up happening is we have an adult many times that their superiority and their God-given abilities has gotten them to a certain place, but they're not equipped to know how to deal with other men, to receive instruction, to be challenged, and to back to your word, they don't understand how to deal with failure.
Mm-hmm.
This kind of thing repeats itself over and over and over again. And the thing again that I think that I pride myself on with that is that like I might be the most stern disciplinarian with somebody, but I'll turn around and hug them right after. And it may be the most important thing because what happens oftentimes is they either get hugged too much or they're getting, you know, disciplined too much. And you have to find whatever that balance is if you're trying to get them over the hump. And then it's the relentless consistency. I think the other thing with that is that when these young men know that no matter what happens, I'm not going to give up you as a human being. I will not give up. Even if I cut you off my team, even if I have to remove you from something, it doesn't mean I'm giving up on you as a human being. It means I'm still going to be showing up in whatever way I can for you as a human to human. I'm going to check up on you. No matter how you perform as an athlete, I still care about you as a human being. I'm invested in you as a human being. That honestly is more than anything, because what ends up happening, especially with all of this stuff, is it turns into a transaction, you know, and relationships are not transactional. They shouldn't be, you know. We want to plant trees whose shade we may never sit under.
Mm.
You know, like we want to invest and pour into people in such a way that we may not ever see the benefit of it, but we just doing right because it's right to do right. Because we want to plant seeds, we want to nurture, we want to grow other people. So yeah, I would say that's the biggest thing that I see.
Okay, and believe it or not, that is 21 minutes. Right there.
That's a lot.
You're on time. You know that? You never late. We do those 5 a.m. workouts, boy, you were there. So any last words, Gilbert? I really appreciate you, man. You could have the last word. I just want to say I thank you so much for your time and your inspiration and your words. What we're trying to do is really just trying to give men from different perspectives information to help them be better and help other men be better. So with that being said, I'll let you close us out with your last word of whatever you want to say.
my father shared a quote with me, and I'll share it. It's he said that he wanted to pray a prayer for me and for all young men, right? That the evening will be better than the morning. And I would hope that that as we all, continue to plant a tree whose shade we may never sit under, that one day the evening will be better than the morning for our children, for the men that we mentor, for all the people that we love when we care about.
Man, thank you so much. With that, we're going to end. That's an awesome word. Everyone have a good night, and I'll see you next month. Thank you.
Thank you, man.